This is chapter 16, and for now we're just going to focus on the aquatic biomes that are present in this chapter. One thing that's not in your book but is important is algae and marine biomes supply a large portion of the Earth's oxygen, and it also is important in taking in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. All that excess carbon dioxide that we're emitting now, algae is really important in storing that. So the first biome is oceans. On page 417, know this figure and parts of the ocean: oceanic ridges, trenches, island arcs, continental shelves, and we'll come back to this when we talk about plate tectonics. Ocean salinity refers to the amount of salt that's present, and the ocean salinity is 3.5% or 35 parts per thousand on average. The ocean salinity is low near the equator because there's a lot of precipitation and that water dilutes the salt. And remember, the equator is where tropical rainforests are. The salt is high at 30 to 35 degrees latitude, north and south, and that is where deserts are. The water gets evaporated and leaves behind excess salt. Also know how water's high heat capacity influences coastal climates. Water has a high heat capacity, which means that it's able to absorb and store a lot of heat energy before actually raising its temperature. That's why when you go to the pool, the water in the pool is a lot cooler than the sidewalk next to it. They're both absorbing the same amount of heat energy, but the water's temperature isn't changing while the pavement or the sidewalk is going to be really hot. So that's really important. Also because it stabilizes organisms' body temperatures. So we're going to flip over to page 424, and we'll come back to the other pages later. So know the parts of the ocean. The photic zone is the top, the surface of the water. That's where the most photosynthesis happens because of the light that's able to pass through. The intertidal zone is this area right here. It has a very diverse ecosystem. The organisms have had to adapt because of the harsh conditions. There's low tide, high tide, so salinity differs. Temperature ranges differ as well throughout the days. So they've had to adapt to be able to live in those conditions. So the intertidal zone is the most diverse part of the ocean. The pelagic zone is between the photic zone and the benthic zone. It's kind of like the open ocean. And the benthic zone is the very bottom of the ocean. So as we move on to 425, there are other aquatic biomes here. There are salt marshes and mangrove forests. They're both wetlands, which means that their soil is saturated in water. Salt marshes occur in the temperate zones, so like the United States, mid-United States, and mangrove forests are in tropical zones. So you need to know how they benefit ecologically and economically. Ecologically, they provide homes, they provide nurseries, they help purify water, purify air, help restore the water table and groundwater. And economically, they help protect against storm surges. So they're kind of like a barrier, and they soften the blow of storms. But definitely read these sections to get a more in-depth knowledge. An estuary is another wetland, and it's where water meets the ocean. So it has a mixture of fresh and salt water, and that's called brackish water. And the salt levels will vary whenever the tide changes, when there's waves, when there's rain as well. The next aquatic biome is coral reefs. Coral are tropical, and they have a mutualistic relationship with an organism called zooxanthellae. So zooxanthellae is what gives coral their vibrant color. It's an algae, and they're sensitive to temperature and pollution. So if the temperature gets very high or if there's a lot of pollution, the zooxanthellae will actually leave the coral, and that's called coral bleaching. All right, so benefits of coral. They provide very diverse habitats for other organisms. They are a nursery for fish, a safe space for fish to live. They absorb wave energy, and they help provide tourism. Some threats to coral is fishing techniques. Some fishing techniques will scrape coral. Sometimes they have to be cut if they're close to the coastline. They have to be cut so that ships can pass through. Sewage and toxins can affect them, can cause coral bleaching. And then ocean acidification can also cause coral bleaching and can hinder coral from forming. So all the excess CO2 that is in the air gets absorbed by the ocean, and that can produce an acid. So that will cause acidification. That's not good for coral. So that's it for now for chapter 16.